What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Redline Racing Garage. So we finally picked up the parts that got powder coated. I went to the shop this morning, picked up all of the stuff, and they look amazing. It took a while to get this stuff done, but it was well worth it. It looks amazing, literally brand new parts, painted. We got it all primed with zinc, painted, glossy black. Looks really good. Check this out. Alright, so today the plan is I want to get the subframe in, and then I also want to get the steering rack in there as well, and then we can finally start bolting up all of these suspension components. Another thing is I finally dropped the motor off of the engine stand there, got it on this dolly here, so I can finally put the transmission on there. I also got the clutch on, the flywheel, everything is torqued to spec, so we're good to go on that. We can finally put the transmission on, and then the swap is almost ready to go. And then also we have the turbo here, the manifold, wastegate, blow off valve, all of this stuff off of the 8th gen, which can go on the swap right here. We're going to be using all of those parts for this particular swap, and then once that's all done, we're basically just slapping on all the suspension components. We're gonna get the bearings and the trailing arms and all that kind of stuff. So everything is ready to go. Basically all of these parts that I have laid out on the floor is just stuff that I've picked up, that I've removed, and that I just brought right now. And there is still a bunch of stuff, guys, a bunch of boxes, suspension and all that kind of stuff. There's more boxes over there. So it's safe to say that we basically have every single thing that we need to start, from start to finish. So let's get to it. I don't want to waste any more time. I'm gonna clear all this stuff, put it somewhere in a safe place, but I want to start by bolting up the subframe, the steering rack, and then go from there. Alright, so we got some new bushings for the rack and pinion, so we're going to be putting those on. I have already removed, you can say, the sleeves, so we're going to be putting the bushings on that, and then those new bushings will be going on the nicely painted steering rack. So I'm just going to get that going, just so that the steering rack is ready to go. And then, as you can see, I've already cleared up all the stuff, got it all laid out over there. And then we're gonna go and install this subframe, or at least attempt it, but we should be good to go. Alright, so subframe is unwrapped, got it kind of lined up. Just gonna drop the car down and then line it up as I bring it down. Also got the bolts kind of organized exactly where they go to mount the subframe. So let's get right to it. Let's start to bring this thing down and line this thing up. Alright, so I did put a chair before I actually dropped the car down. I put the subframe on the chair, just put some cardboard to kind of protect the subframe so it doesn't get scratched up. I did need a little bit of room. I didn't want to do it on the floor because then there's no room for me to kind of get in and bolt it all up. So we have some space for me to kind of, you know, lay there. I think I lined it up pretty well with all the holes, and I think that's as low as it's gonna go. So nothing left but to get under there and bolt this thing up. Alright, so before I actually get in here, I'm gonna start by bolting up the two front bolts and then the two end bolts on the other side, and then we'll go and then bolt up the rest. So I did go and put some anti-seize on the front bolts and then the little ones in the back, just so we don't have any issues in the future. So caught all four corner ones, 1, 2, 3, 4. Got the chair out of there as well, so it's pretty much holding on its own. We're gonna raise the car up and then tackle the other 4 bolts, and then the subframe is done. Subframe is all in, bolted down, ready to go. So next thing, we're gonna drop it back down and start installing the steering rack. Alright, got the steering rack unwrapped. Feels like I'm unwrapping presents, guys. Christmas came a little bit late this year, but nonetheless, I'm super glad that all this stuff is ready to go. So right now, before we actually install the steering rack onto the subframe, we gotta go and grease these guys up a little bit and then put the bushings from both sides, push them in right over here, and then we can go and install the rack to the subframe. Alright, so grease them up. I also will be greasing up a little bit of the bushings on the inside as well, just to get it all nice and moist in there. And it's always a good idea to go and grease up all your bushings, because you're going to get a very, very bad squeaking noise, like you and your wife in bed. And then, hey, you know how it is. Then there's more trauma for your kids, so we don't want that. No trauma for the kids. So grease up those bushings, guys. Alright, so the bushings are in. They will get pressed together once we bolt it all up. There is another thing that I did want to address before we actually put this in. I don't like this piece right here, this loop, hose, U-shape, whatever you want to call it. So there is a nice little product that Finishing Lines does supply, and it's like a copper finish steel line, and it'll also go and clean up the rack quite a bit. So I want to replace this thing before we actually put it on, because this thing might start leaking. So we can kind of address that, put that on, and then we can go and install it. So I'm gonna get this nice little piece from Finishing Lines on, and then we can put this thing in. All right, steering rack is in, looking good, nice and glossy. Alright guys, so that'll pretty much do it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. It wasn't really nothing too crazy, nothing too exciting, but it is the first step into the exciting part of the build, which is putting on all of these new shiny parts. The part that I've been waiting for so long, and it is here. The subframe is in, the steering rack is in, everything is bolted up, good to go. In the next episode, we're going to be installing all of the suspension components, mostly in the front. I want to get the front all good and ready to go, so that we can go and drop the motor in there and get all the wiring done. Then I'll worry about the back a little bit later, but I want to get all of the front suspension stuff in, and then we can finally go and drop the motor. But that'll be in the next episode, so stay tuned and peace out, guys.